Everybody make we run the race. Now you and me, now you and me, now you and me, go fix our Niger.
If we be true Nigerians, we go rise hand in hand, uphold the 7-for-7 agenda for Niger, our hope, our pride, and our strength.
Powered by National Orientation Agency.
We encourage you to click on the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are Voice of the People TV. Also follow us on all our social media platforms. We are at VOPTV Live. Visit our website www.vop.ng for fresh and trending news. Also watch us live on SLTV channel 264. VOPTV, Voice of the People Television.
VOP TV. Now you have more than a voice.
In a world where power shifts with every headline.
In a nation full of questions.
In a world filled with noise, the truth needs the voice.
The policies that shapes our world and the economy that determines our future.
Every hour, every day, the grapevine keeps buzzing. And together, we are committed to telling the stories that shape our world because your voice is our focus.
Don't forget, our voice matters the most. Let us come together and share our concerns.
In a world where power shifts with every headlines, news breaks and events happens, we bring you unbiased and explicit information on politics, economy, and state of the nation. We break down the chaos. Facts, not fluff. Truth, not spin. We discuss not just politics, but a glimpse into the future. Voice of the People Television. Now you have more than a voice.
Do you want your voice to be heard? Do you know that you matter in the scheme of things? The People's Voice, the show where ordinary citizens take center stage as we discuss the biggest stories that affect you and I. With you in mind, we facilitate lively discussions, debates, and interviews on the topics that matter most to you and I. From social justice to economic empowerment, education to healthcare, governance, and more. Tackling tough topics and amplifying your voice. People's Voice. Mondays through Thursdays, 4 p.m. Join the conversation and make your voice count. The People's Voice. Make your voice count.
What happens in the hush behind hangar doors? Who signs the papers that gamble with lives? Which truths were grounded before they even ever had wings? If you've ever buckled a seatbelt at 30,000 feet, if you've ever stared out of that tiny window and wondered who's really in control of the skies, it isn't just flight, it's power, it's politics, it's pressure sealed in steel. We're peeling back the clouds from runway risks to sky-high secrets. We're diving deep where most dare not to look. Aviation Scope, every Sunday at 7 p.m. only on Voice of the People TV. We don't just report, we reveal. We don't just ask, we uncover. Because when it comes to the skies, ignorance is turbulence. Aviation Scope, the sky isn't the limit, it's just the beginning.
Well, a very good afternoon to you and welcome to the African News on Voice of the People Television. I am David Edwin. We begin the African News from the story where President Donald Trump has offered to restart the United States-led mediation between Egypt and Ethiopia over the Nile waters and the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam, that's the Gerd. Describing the status as truly understandable but warning against the risk of military confrontation, Trump said in a letter addressed to Egyptian President Abdel el-Sisi that resolving tensions around the Gerd was at the top of his agenda. He linked the issue to his broader push for lasting peace in the Middle East and Africa. Trump wrote that he was ready to restart U.S. mediation between Egypt and Ethiopia to responsibly resolve the question of the Nile water sharing once and for all, adding that his team understands the deep significance of the Nile River to Egypt and its people. According to him, Washington's position was that no state in this region should unilaterally control the precious resources of the Nile and disadvantage its neighbors in the process. It also stressed the need for an outcome that secures the long-term water needs of Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia. In another development, United States President Donald Trump has flayed Britain over its deal to cede to Mauritius the sovereignty of the Chagos Archipelago, including an island with an important US-UK airbase. Trump described the move as an act of total weakness and great stupidity, saying it underlines why he wants to acquire Greenland. Washington had last year approved the deal which gave the Indian Ocean islands to Mauritius, but retained UK's control of Diego Garcia base under a 99-year lease. However, Trump reversed that, expressing shock that the United Kingdom, which is America's brilliant North Atlantic Treaty Organization ally, is currently planning to give away the island of Diego Garcia, the site of a vital U.S. military base, and for no reason whatsoever. He stated that there is no doubt that China and Russia have noticed these acts of total weakness, adding that the UK giving away extremely important land is an act of great stupidity and another in a very long line of national security reasons, while Greenland has to be acquired. Meanwhile, the United Nations Human Rights Chief, Ravina Shamdasani, has warned that under no circumstances should the horrific violations committed during the capture of El Fasher in Sudan's North Darfur region be repeated as fighting escalates in South Kordofan. Addressing newsmen in Geneva, Shamdasani said UN High Commissioner Volker Turk ended a 5-day visit to Sudan on Sunday, during which he witnessed the impact of violence on displaced civilians, including at a site in northern state sheltering about 20,000 people. Recalling that the capture of El Fasher in late October was characterized by widespread summary executions, the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war, dehumanizing treatment, and abduction for ransom. She described it as an 18-month siege that deprived civilians of food, healthcare, and basic services. According to Shamdasani, talk urged all parties of the conflict, including in the meeting with the Rapid Support Forces delegation, to ensure that the crimes committed during and after the takeover of El Fasher were not repeated in Kadugli, Dilin, and the wider Kordofan region. And from that, we move straight to Uganda, where Uganda military chief Mahuze Kainerugaba says he was praying for the death of fugitive opposition leader Bobi Wine and gave him 48 hours to surrender to the police after a contentious presidential election. Kainerugaba, who is Museveni's son, is widely believed to be his preferred successor, made a series of threats on X against Wine late on Monday, referring to him by the derisive nickname Kakobi. He stated that if Wine does not surrender to the police within 48 hours, he would be treated as an outlaw and rebel and handled accordingly. In another reference to Wine's National Unity Platform Party, Kainerugaba added that they have killed 22 NUP terrorists since last week, and that he was praying the 23rd was Kabobi. Wine has said he fled a military raid on his house hours before veteran President Yoweri Museveni was declared the landslide winner of last week's presidential election. Still in Uganda, available documents show that Uganda has charged over 100 members of its biggest opposition party with various offenses, including unlawful assembly related to violence over last week's election. According to the NUP lawyer, Kato Tomosini, no fewer than 118 members of the NUP were taken to various courts in the capital, Kampala, and charged with offenses that included unlawful assembly, conspiracy, and unlawful possession of election materials. The East African country's veteran 81-year-old leader, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, was declared the landslide winner of the January 15 polls with 71.6% of the vote against the 24% of his opponent, Bobi Wine. The pop star turned politician and his National Unity Platform Party have rejected the result, alleging widespread irregularities, including ballot stuffing, enforced disappearance of polling agents, and intimidation by security forces. Wine's whereabouts remain unknown after he said he had escaped a raid by the military on his home. And in Zimbabwe, opposition and civic groups say they are prepared to legally challenge any attempt to amend the constitution with the aim of extending President Emmerson Mnangagwa's terms beyond the current limit. Government officials had confirmed that the draft constitutional amendment bill was ready for cabinet and parliamentary consideration. However, critics say the proposed changes are a partisan effort to extend Mnangagwa's rule to 2030, a move they argue will violate the 2013 constitution, undermine democracy, and threaten national stability. Speaking under the aegis of the Constitution Defenders Forum, convened by former Finance Minister Tendai Biti, the group said they are ready, legally, civically, and peacefully, to oppose what they describe as a political project designed to override constitutional safeguards. The group cited sections of the Constitution that governs presidential term limits and amendment procedures as clear barriers to any such extension. Meanwhile, Mnangagwa has repeatedly declared that he is a constitutionalist and will leave office when his tenure ends in 2028. Still on election matters, the Constitutional Court of Central African Republic has validated President Faustin Archange Touadera's victory in a disputed December 28 presidential election that handed him a third term. President of the Constitutional Council, Jean-Pierre Wabert, declared Todera president-elect in the first round with 77.9% of the vote, even before provisional results were announced on January the 5th. Todera's opponents had alleged fraud, but the government denied that. Todera's main rival and former Prime Minister, Anicet Georges Dolongweli, received 13.5% of the vote, according to the final results from the Electoral Commission. The Constitutional Court said it rejected an appeal that Dolongweli had lost after the announcement of provisional results. Last week, another competitor and former Prime Minister, Henry Maria Dondra, who got 2.97% of the vote, acknowledged Todera's victory, saying he decided not to appeal. Meanwhile, opposition parties in Botswana are preparing a no-confidence motion against President Advocate Boko, citing his handling of the country's collapsing healthcare system and other failed promises. The move, announced by Kisentagili's Gaboswang of the Botswana Congress Party, comes in the wake of Boko's recent surprise visit to Princess Marina Hospital in Gaborone, a visit that critics warns risks being dismissed as political theater rather than genuine intervention. Gaboswang accused the president of failing the country, saying that he declared a public health emergency without first familiarizing with the realities on the ground. According to him, the opposition will table the motion when Parliament resumes this year, adding that though people say the party does not have the numbers, they will not be deterred as they have a rock-solid charge sheet. Away from that report, and in Kenya, a group of female motorcycle riders known as the Border Girls are helping bridge a critical gap in maternal health care across Western Kenya. Trained not only in motorcycle riding, but also in basic maternal health and patient care, many of the women are nurses or community health workers with a simple but vital mission to transport free of charge pregnant women in remote areas to health facilities for checkups, scans, and safe deliveries. Launched in 2022, the initiative operates in Siasa, Kisumu, and Homwe Bay counties, where long-distance, poor roads, and transport costs often prevent women from accessing timely medical care. For many expectant mothers, the presence of a female rider provides an added sense of comfort and security, according to a mother from the region, Maureen Achieng, who says that she preferred being taken to the hospital by a woman. She added that she and her family feel more confident with a female rider other than a male motorcyclist. You're still watching the African News right here on Voice of the People Television. We'll go straight to the analysis segment of the news. And joining us now to make sense of these stories and more in the studio with us is Barrister Darlington Agumo. Barrister Darlington is a legal practitioner right here in Nigeria and also a public and political affairs analyst and commentator. Barrister, a very good afternoon to you, sir, and welcome to the African News segment.
It's my pleasure, David.
Thank you so very much for being here. Also joining us virtually all the way from Kenya is Mr. Martins Irere Njwe. Mr. Martins is a financial expert and financial advisor, also a public and political affairs analyst and commentator. Mr. Martins, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you for joining the analysis segment of the African News.
A very good afternoon to you, Mr. David, and my friend on the studio.
Thank you so very much for joining us. Well, also joining us virtually all the way from Uganda is Barrister Edward Okwaro Matakinye. Barrister Edward is a human rights activist, a legal practitioner in Uganda, and also a business associate as well. Barrister Edward, a very good afternoon to you and welcome to the analysis segment of the African News.
Very good afternoon to you, David, and the rest of the team. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for joining us. Also joining us is a Zimbabwean who is in Kenya. Okay, I understand he's not joined yet, but we're expecting him. And I'm talking about Dr. Masimba Mavasa. He's a Zimbabwean, also in the UK presently, I must say. But let's start off this conversation from Uganda. And I'm going to start off with you, Barrister Edward. Interestingly, conversation surrounding post-election is what I want to ask you right now. What is the situation, the body language of Ugandans after election, and of course after President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni have been declared unopposed incumbent winner of the last election?
Thank you, David. Sorry, I think we were to discuss this matter yesterday.
Yes.
And I think network was an issue. The mood and actually the situation in hand in Uganda is totally not, it's not a positive because, you know, a country where you get people have waken up to go and exercise their rights. They are waking up to actually elect their leaders. And at the end of the day, you are denied the rights. It means that alone makes you not actually even to be such a person who's willing to be in such an environment. So the environment is totally not all that good. People are in fear with the pronouncements of the CDF, who's now the son of the president, who has promised and threatened, and even as we talk, not even threatening, because there are so many people who have been arrested, so many who are mourning, so many who are lost, and we are yet to understand what the motive of this regime is. And we are also trying to ask ourselves, is the world leaving us as Ugandans alone? Because we have not seen any international community, be it those powers who have actually been too much aggressive in other areas, talking about this issue. It is just only the few civil societies who are trying to actually talk about it and try to discourage the torture and, you know, psychological torture in the country, which is brought by the military as we talk.
Now, I'm still going to stay with you, Barrister Edward. Concerns are being raised about the fact that, yes, there's an alleged rumor that the son of President Yoweri Museveni is most likely going to take after him. Is Uganda gradually sliding into a dynasty dictatorship where secession is decided by threats rather than the ballots, like we're supposed to have in a country that says it has democracy?
Not that alleged. This is directly what Mr. Museveni is actually hardly working for. For sure, telling you that in Uganda there is only one tribe called the Bahima, where Museveni is coming from. That is the only tribe which is celebrating, even after the elections. So you see, normally when you have elected a right person, you would get celebrations every corner in the country.
Yes.
But you can see the mood of people in Uganda. So ideally, the Bahimas have become the dynasts, and now they are the ones who are taking charge, and we are really waiting for that day. Because I remember some 2 years ago when Museveni said, he actually said in one of the functions that he will retire and leave his son, which is going to actually happen. So this is the way to go. So we shall be living in a country of dynasts, a country where no voice, no freedom, a country where you are ruled by military, by a gun. That is what we are right now in Uganda. And we're also praying that one day, one time, probably the Ugandans will get back their rights and move on with their lives.
That the situation does not degenerate to that level. Let me come to the studio before I go to Kenya. Barrister, this is something that is really, really alarming. And like you heard the barrister in Uganda say, the mood in Uganda is clearly dampened by the results, clearly not the will of the people. But I want to come on the part of where the West clearly have been silent on the matter, particularly on the human rights abuses that have been occurring in that particular country. Is this clearly an act of effectively legitimizing Museveni's impunity? Because this is what it's all about. I mean, you would recall that the UN clearly said that the mood before election was a repression mood in Uganda. Is this silence loud enough to the views and the ears and eyes of everybody all across the world?
Nobody is in support of what Yoweri Museveni have done.
So why the silence from the West?
But because of this sovereignty, the so-called sovereign, you know, over there, they respect such things. And so when they are not talking, they are expecting you who is the person bearing the brunt. They are expecting you to react, then they will come in. That is how it is done. They cannot just come into Uganda and then start harassing Yoweri Museveni if the people are in sync with what he has done. So if you don't like it, then there should be protests and lockdowns.
Now, Barrister, another question I want to ask you before we move to Kenya is the fact that the military head, who of course is the son of the president, has branded opposition leaders as terrorists. The question now is this a deliberate move to justify the extrajudicial killings that have been ongoing in the country since before elections and post-election?
Of course. When you want to hang a dog, you give it a bad name. They will call him all sorts of names just because he dared to oppose Yoweri Museveni in an election that's supposed to be free and fair. So such things, you should not be surprised. That is the father. Like father, like son. It is left for the people of Uganda. That's what I'm saying here. It is left for them. Because they say, as you make your bed, so shall you lie on it. If they want what Yoweri have done to continue, all well and good. Oh, well and good.
Oh, well, let me take this conversation to Kenya, where Mr. Martins is joining the conversation. I'm going to come to you on the part of the business angle, because before now, the UN did say that the mood at which Ugandans are before election was a repressional mood that is not good for that election. But political repression, a lot of times, have discouraged foreign direct investment. With these kind of elections, and of course the result being announced and President Museveni winning landslide, is this clearly going to bring some level, from your perspective as a financial advisor, would it bring some level of confidence when it comes to investor confidence, foreign investment confidence in Uganda, from your perspective?
Thank you, Mr. David. Yeah, when an investor is looking to a country or an environment to invest, first of all, the fundamental key is the political hygiene in that environment or in that country. And when there is political turmoil in the governance and in that state or in that country, you find investors, the people of goodwill who wanted to grow the economy of such country, they will pull off, because now insecurity, political insurgents, or you can name it, this will affect the growth of the country. Secondly, the youth we see in the street, these are jobless young people who want to they are facing issue of hand to mouth. So in such situation, you will find that investors, they fear, because they will come and begin a corporation or in industry, then the next day within a week it is vandalized or theft. And in these cases, even you find the terrorism takes the way because it is politically promoted. So basically, in such a scenario, it is hard to invest in a country where there is no political stability, or where security is insatiable. To state that how the Uganda should do if Bob Wine cannot do this alone, he needed when they release BCJ from the bar or from the prison, the people of Uganda should seek what we call referendum. They need the changes where a president should go for 1 term or 2 terms, then he leaves the stage. In that way now we're gonna see the engine in democracy. This will attract the investors. What is happening in Uganda is not different in what is happening in Tanzania. Regardless, even if we are in right now here in Kenya, we can say we are democratically growing because and the 2 terms are over. He exited the stage. From the people we elect another president who will take over. So you find here in Kenya, regardless of the bureaucracies and such kind of politics which comes and go, here it's a place good for investment. But where there is political insatiable and such kind of scenarios, you find the investors are pulling off.
All right, then. Well, let me go back to Uganda, where Barrister Edward is still with us. Now, a question I want to ask is, right now, Bobby Wine, opposition leader, and of course, the candidate of the last election, opposition candidate of the last election, it's an exile. And of course, the military chief is clearly looking out for him and asking him to surrender. How much of a threat is Bobby Wine to the existence of these governments that have been elected again to run for another term in office? Why should the military chief be looking for Bobby Wine, from your perspective?
David, number one, what matters in an election or in a country is democracy.
Right.
Where there is no democracy, we tend never to go to our proper ways of even actually in a rule of law. So Uganda has shown the world that there is no democracy. And the panic of the chief of staff, the biggest man in the country, and to make things worse, is a son to the president. When he issues such threats to the candidate, he does not just reissue, he is acting on behalf of the father, meaning that all the threats are meant to actually harm opposition. So it is one way of actually making opposition never to be there, threaten anyone who wants to stand up in such a democracy to actually step away. So Bob Wine's threats, even as we talk, actually the family is not in. We are happy he escaped immediately after the elections, just to save his life. But we are still questioning why the military is still guarding, surrounding his family. Because as we talk, just a few minutes ago, the family was actually crying because they have lost even the food in the house. There is no food, there is no water, because these are all things which have been denied. This is actually a person we consider as a presidential candidate. So those are things we need to ask ourselves. Does Uganda need, as Africa, does Uganda need a support of all Africans? Does Uganda require at this point to come together as Africans? We see how can sort out this kind of issues. Because African Union coming to endorse the candidature of Museveni, the election of Museveni, it shows you that we still are backward, even on our own institutions. We do not actually respect what we call democracy. We do not actually respect rule of law. So as we continue, even as Africans, we need to look at ways of coming and handle our own matters in hand before we even seek for any support from international communities, international bodies. We are capable. The fear Museveni is actually giving, not only in Uganda, Museveni is actually giving this fear and it is spreading. I'm not worried. I'm not actually surprised that this kind of rule of law will come up to Nigeria. It might even be there because I see Museveni is extending the siege everywhere in Africa, which is actually unfortunate for the leaders who lead us at this moment.
Quite unfortunate, really. Let me come back to the studio here. Barrister, interestingly, Barrister Edward in Uganda did say that Museveni is becoming a virus that might affect every other African state, and that, again, should be a concern for Africans. Let's talk about the fact that the AU, African Union, have endorsed the election of Museveni. First off, there is a concern about the fact that even though the UN statement clearly states that the military presence in that country is a reason for repression on the part of voters, how much of an impact would the affirmation of AU to that kind of election have on Africa as a continent?
I don't think the AU is bothered, and I don't think they should be bothered. It is a matter for Ugandans. This is their internal affairs. On what ground will anybody interfere when the people of Uganda are quiet about the whole thing? And so, if they don't approve of what happened, of course, they should go and protest.
Are they really quiet, Barrister? Because as it stands, the young people, even if they take to the streets, you hear the head of the military clearly stating that an opposition leader, presidential opposition leader, is declared wanted and should present himself in the next 48 hours. So with these kind of threats, Barrister, what can an ordinary Ugandan do?
Anybody who is afraid of what the security agencies will do or say before going on a protest will never go on that protest. Go and check all over the world. People that meant to go on protest, they don't care. It's just that they will embarrass the government when they start making noise and arresting people and all that. The whole world will see what is going on there, and it will attract their attention. The people of Uganda are still docile, and so help will not come from outside.
Well, I like the fact that you said that it is best to go and protest, and I'm going to move straight to an interesting conversation that is about emerging in Zimbabwe. As we speak, Barrister, opposition and, of course, civil groups in Zimbabwe are prepared to legally and at all costs challenge any attempt for the legislators to tweak the constitution to allow President Emerson Mnangagwa go beyond the term limits that he's currently in. In fact, as we speak, the bill is with the legislators. This particular kind of conversation of tweaking the constitution to allow the incumbent stay in power beyond the time limit, this is happening one too many in Africa. How can this be stopped, Barrister?
You know, evil character is very attractive. It's very attractive and very, very important to those who want to go through that route. They need to copy what they saw somewhere. I told you when Paul Biya started this that it is now the trend in Africa. Every other African leader has caught the bug. It's like a virus spreading all through African states. And so, except African youth to come together and do that thing that happened is it not in Tunisia? Arab Spring. That's what they are calling for now. And that's the only solution to this nonsense. African youth should rise up and let us have one revolution in Africa for once. It's about time. That is the only solution, though, because that's what solved the problem in the Western world in those years of impunity and arrogance. A woman was told in France that the people have no bread to eat. And she said, okay, if they don't have bread, then they should go and eat cake. Is that not what caused the French Revolution? So This same arrogance that is going on in Africa today, except they rise up, and that is the youth. Nothing will change.
But then, Barrister,
nothing will change.
Legislators, before I go to Kenya, legislators have said that this would only strengthen the progress done so far with the Emerson Mnangagwa's led administration. And of course, that is not threatening any national stability. How much of these should the people believe? These are legislators that were elected by them.
Look, there is a proverb that says that an able man knows himself. He's just waiting for somebody to tell him, then you now say that you are abusing him. What do you expect from a compromised legislature? No, what do you expect? Is that not how they did it all over the place? They first of all tamper with the constitution. After that, they will not tell you it's for national interest. It's for national interest. And you ask which national interest? Who is going to benefit from this interest? That is what is going on in Africa. I said it has become a trend. And unless a very powerful force push that evil, it will not go away. That's the truth. The youth of Africa should rise up. Their future is at stake here.
Oh, well, then, let's take this conversation to Kenya. And of course, before we move to Uganda and wrap up the conversation, Mr. Martins, this conversation about tweaking the constitution again is at the front burner, and it's about happening in Zimbabwe. Well, civil society groups have come to say, look, at every single space that we have, we will kick against this because efforts to extend Mnangagwa's rule to 2030 will not happen in Zimbabwe. The legislators, like I said earlier, have said, look, this is not going to trample or undermine democracy. It's only going to consolidate on what President Emerson Mnangagwa has been doing so far. What's the position with this kind of conversation of rejigging the constitution to extend the tenure of a president?
Thank you, Mr. Edwins. To focus on democracy, mostly democracy is run by the constitution, and that's why you can see majority of the president or incumbent, they come and start amending the constitution to suit their personal or to pass their personal bills through a constitution. But you find in most cases this constitution amendment doesn't follow the due process. You find like now referendum is there is no referendum. You find there is no public participation on that amendment. So when a country want to amend their constitution to meet their democratic values and the principles, they should call a referendum or public participation. Because you find these people or this fella, they come and amend the constitution to suit their personal interest, but not the public interest. I think I've interacted with the various constitutions across East Africa and Africa at large, and the United States, the one that we are dealing in here. You find the first chapter or article of our constitution, it says, the sovereign will rest with the people of the republic. Right. So you find the people are the key. Any constitution which doesn't start with the power of or sovereignty, power of the people, that the constitution should be taken back to the kitchen and bring that which suits our taste. Right, if that constitution doesn't address the issue facing the people, that constitution is not solid and it is invalid. So the best thing to do with the constitution is to bring the public participation, so that these people are the one that has given them job to run their affairs, to manage their tax. So if the constitution is not self-centric, is not republic-centric, that constitution is invalid.
All right, then let me take this conversation quickly to Uganda, where we'll wrap up this conversation. Barrister Edward, interestingly, the bill in question is already with the legislators, but opposition has said that, look, this same man tried this thing in 2013, and he's trying to try it again in 2026. How much of an impact would these have, should it find the light of the day in Zimbabwe. Plus, from your perspective, do you think that the legislators clearly would dance to the tune of the president, or is there the possibility that a protest might stall this bill from being read or being debated in the House?
Yeah, for sure. It's very difficult to defeat the agenda of the president. At the end of the day, I remember even in Kenya, it has gone through trial. There was what we call a finance bill, which I'm happy that the Gen Zs from Kenya stood up, and it was actually removed after the president surrendered on that kind of a legislation.
Yeah.
Also talking of Uganda, the military bill was brought to parliament, where it got its way because all the legislators were on the side of the president. So I'm just seeing the same thing coming up even from that country. You know, what I'm just trying to copy up from one of our elder in the studio, we need to do what we call a revolution as Africa. Africa needs a revolution to rescue their democracy, a revolution to rescue the rule of law. We need a revolution to rescue our human rights from the so-called the hyenas. We also need a revolution to rescue our accountability in Africa. Africa needs leaders who are accountable, leaders who respect the law, leaders who are who feel humanity is part of life. We should always respect humanity. But as we look at Africa today, all our leaders are for their own interest. They have no interest in their own people. And no country in Africa, I can say, probably right now, the citizens are really feeling safe in that reason.
But the huge question now would be, is Africans truly ready for that kind of revolution? Because again, when we say revolution, you find some other people have to be weaponized by poverty, not dance to the tune of wanting to have that revolution. But this is really where we have to draw anchor on the analysis segment of the African News. I want to say a big thank you to all of the panelists on the table today. And from the studio here, we had Barrister Darlington Agumo, who joined us. Of course, is a legal practitioner and, of course, a public and political affairs analyst and commentator. Barrister, thank you so very much for being here.
My pleasure.
Also, Barrister Edward, thank you so very much for joining the conversation this beautiful afternoon. I want to say a big thank you to you. Barrister Edward is a legal practitioner in Uganda and also a human rights activist as well as a business associate. Thank you so very much, Barrister, for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Also, thank you so very much, Mr. Martin Siririnjui, for joining the conversation. Mr. Martin is a financial advisor and a financial expert, and also a public and political affairs analyst, the CEO of WorldGate Insurance Agency. Thank you so very much for being here, Mr. Martins.
Thank you, sir, and you're welcome.
Thank you so very much. We'll take a very short break right now. When we return, more stories on the African News. Fighting in South Sudan after opposition forces push to take back Juba. These and more after the break. Please stay with us. Glad to have you back. It is still the African News right here on Voice of the People Television. Now to more stories. Fighting has erupted in Panyume, a small town of South Sudan's southern border, just the day after a senior opposition commander ordered rebel forces to advance on the national capital, Juba. Spokesman for the rebel Sudan's People's Liberation Army in opposition, Colonel Lam Gabriel, said the clashes began as opposition forces launched an offensive to seize control of Panyume. He said government troops were retreating south towards Morobo County headquarters, roughly 21 kilometers away. According to him, details will follow shortly as the SSPDF are being pursued towards Morobo County headquarters. Meanwhile, former Rukona County Commissioner Gatlak Nya claimed that the town had fallen to the opposition, which he said were advancing towards Morobo and Yi, suggesting a coordinated northward and southward march. From that story, we move straight to some business story. Uganda's central bank said the country's gold exports leaped 75.8% last year from the previous 12 months, helped by record prices that attracted new dealers into the sector. Gold has surpassed coffee as the East African country's biggest export and source of foreign exchange. According to the Bank of Uganda's Executive Director for Research and Economic Analysis, Adam Mugume, in 2025, Uganda shipped bullions worth $5.8 billion, up from $3.3 billion in 2024. He partly attributed the increase to the soaring international gold prices. Uganda has emerged in recent years as a processing and trading center for gold shipped in from neighbors, including Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, South Sudan, and other areas, as it produces little gold of its own. The price of gold rose over 64% in 2025 as global geopolitical tension drove a surge in demand for a safe haven metal. Still talking business, Malawi's energy regulator hiked the price of petrol and diesel for the second time in 4 months on Tuesday to prevent fuel shortages and preserve scarce foreign exchange. The cost of petrol was hiked by almost 42% to 4,965 kwacha, that's about $2.90 per liter, while diesel was increased by about 41% to 4,945 kwacha per liter, the Malawi Energy Regulatory Authority has said. President Peter Mutharika, who returned to power last year, is trying to turn around the economic fortunes to the donor-dependent Southern African country. His government is also trying to negotiate a new support program for the International Monetary Fund, structure its debt, and boost dwindling international reserves as part of turnaround efforts under the predecessor Lazarus Chakwera. Fuel shortages were a major source of public frustration. And to wrap up the African news, we'll go straight talking sports. Senegal's national football team has returned to Dakar as champions of the African Cup of Nations AFCON, with President Bassirou Faye at the airports to welcome them late Monday. The president praised their single-minded focus throughout the continental tournament, disclosing that while